Welcome back to my channel. My name is Angel in case you're new here. And this vlog, I've already filmed the entire rest of this vlog, so I already know the outcome here. But this is a romance reading vlog in which I will be reading 3 books that are relatively new releases. I think at least all 2023. I'm reading 3 books this reading vlog, and I just want to kind of walk through what they are so that we can kind of hop into the rest of this vlog. First book I'm going to be reading is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is a sequel to Icebreaker. Icebreaker was a very steamy ice skater romance book. Very sexy, very smutty. And this one is about a side character, Russ, who is going away for the summer in between years at college, and he is going to be a camp counselor. And at the beginning of this book, he meets a character, her name is Aurora. She ends up running into Russ at one of the hockey houses parties, and they have a quick hookup. It's great. And then what ends up happening is the next day is the day that camp starts, and they both end up being counselors there, and a sort of romance ensues. The next one is Raiders of the Lost Heart by Segura. This is about Corey, and she is a Mexican-American archaeologist, and she's been hired on to go take part in a dig down in Mexico that might have ties to one of her ancestors. She is signed on, and she finds out that the guy running the actual dig, his name is Ford. They were big rivals in college, especially because they kind of kept going up for the same things, the same scholarships, the same programs, and he just kept getting the better end of the stick. And the last one, which coincidentally I just finished today, this is The Fake Mate by Lana Ferguson. And if you have watched the channel before, I did read The Nanny by Lana Ferguson and absolutely loved it. In this one, we have 2 shifters, which is very different than the rest of these books. This is about a doctor, a female doctor, well, 2 doctors, Mac or Mackenzie here, and she is a new resident at this hospital. And then we have Noah, and he has been there I think for like 10 years, and so he is well established, but he's very grumpy and everyone is kind of afraid of him. We have Mackenzie who approaches Noah and says like, hey, like, you're the first person I saw, would you be willing to pretend to be my boyfriend because my grandmother is absolutely hounding me? In exchange, Noah says, well, actually I've just been threatened because of my like status as a shifter, and they might fire me, so like, will you pretend to actually be like my mate or my wife, more or less, and kind of we'll help each other out here. And so obviously a romance is going to ensue eventually. Those are the 3 books. If you are interested, there's also going to be timestamps down below if you want to skip to one book or another, but I hope you enjoy the vlog. This sweater looks kind of cozy and cute. It's just on backwards. So I wanted to give you an update, the first update for this vlog. I don't know if you know, you might know, but I'm filming a few vlogs this month concurrently. So I started Wildfire, get that out of there. I'm enjoying it so far. I did have an audiobook version and almost immediately just couldn't do it because there was an issue where it started with this very beautiful man's voice, and I was like, oh no, we have a male narrator and a female narrator. And then it cut to the chapter starting off with Russ, one of the main characters, and he had this really weird southern accent, and I might not be portraying it right, but something was going on there.
Henry's eyes are burning into me from across the living room. Your summer is going to suck.
And I was like, that's not the accent that the opening guy had, and I don't know if Russ is supposed to be southern. I'm a little confused because I thought he was living in California. I really don't remember where these books take place, but they're not on the East Coast, so having a southern accent is a little confusing. But I have since read about 82 pages and very easily digestible romance book. At first there were a lot of names being thrown around, and if you don't know the first book, it was a little confusing, but that quickly wore off after the first like 5 to 10 pages. At about 82 pages in, I will say they did have their first smutty little sex scene. They had their hookup that kind of leads into the whole plot. It was pretty good. I was noticing something about the writing of it. It was briefer than I think later scenes will be. This is so silly that I'm just analyzing the sex scenes, but we're here. It's just their first encounter. They're not like in love or whatever. They're just hooking up. There was a little bit of like praise king stuff there, and he was super nervous, but he's like trying to portray himself as confident. Both of them have some daddy issues, which is interesting. I believe like Russ's father is dealing with like a gambling addiction, and so Russ is really like detached from his family. Our other main character, Aurora, she is still a little detached from her family, mostly her dad, because her parents are divorced, and her mother is really, really needy and clingy, and so she's a little mad that that Aurora is going away to be a camp counselor instead of just staying home with her. It's good. I feel like 80 pages though, like it went really fast. And if it was a differently written book or if it wasn't a romance, I feel like I'd be like, this is dragging on. But because it's a romance, it's very light and fluffy for the most part, aside from the trauma stuff, which isn't intense yet, but we'll see where that goes. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it though so far, and I could easily see myself finishing it tonight or tomorrow if I were to read it that quickly. I did also want to showcase very briefly my inappropriate, I don't know if you've heard of this Instagram before, but I had mentioned it to Jose around our anniversary, and I was like, oh my god, they're so cute. I don't want to get them for myself though, it's a little weird, but I would love to have them. And he has a friend who, if you saw my 2024 TBR video, he has a friend who does a lot of like custom stuff, and so he had some things printed for me, which is a little weird that he had his friend print them. Whatever, I'm trying to live beyond it so you can too. But oh great, this is perfect. You can't see the 3D printed side, but you can see without that what this is supposed to be, right? Like, can we see what this is? And it even has a fancy little tassel. So I have had this since our anniversary in October, and I have put off using it because I was like, no, I'm not gonna use that. Like, it's really cute. And then I was like, fuck it. I'm like gonna read my horny books and have my horny bookmark and call it a day. There's another one over here too. I don't like this one as much, but this one's a little bit more obvious. Really liking it so far. I have to say, I think I liked the dynamic with Stassi and Nate, I forget what their first names were, in the first book a little bit more, only because something about them having to be partners and like having to be skate partners was cool. And this is not going to deal at all with hockey, at least not for a majority of the book, because they're away from school. I also don't need to hyperanalyze this. It's freaking romance. Like, I can let it be light and just enjoy it. I might look exactly the same as the previous clip, but I did want to do a quick update because I'm reading, actively reading at all times, honestly. With my inappropriate bookmark that I had to hide when I was at the laundromat. Beautiful. I'm on page 228 now, and this is actually turning out to be a fairly like easy read, and I'm enjoying it. Like, I feel like it's at least a 4-star for me because it's reminding me of these two books. I believe it's like one of the Pucked books and something else I read. And I do really love a good camp book because when I was younger, the camps I actually went to were like school related, and I vividly remember being very depressed, very having a lot of existential crises as a middle schooler, as well as not being popular. And so I think there was also like a crying in the nurse's cabin, calling my mom in the middle of the night. And I know that that's not the optimal experience at a camp. I had a friend growing up who used to go to this like horseback riding camp, and it was like 2 weeks. You rode horses, you did shit with other people on horses, and it was just, I wanted it. I was not a rich kid, so that clearly didn't happen. This is giving me a lot of those really cool vibes of summer camp, and there is a little bit of smut sprinkled in, but I will say compared to like Icebreaker, where they were just like fucking every goddamn chapter, it's kind of refreshing for me to read a romance book and be like, oh, it is a little smutty, but I would just say this is like a romance book. There's going to be enough time, I think, at the end for them to get back to college and interact and theoretically have a relationship in the real world, which is something that they are addressing. The fact that there's like camp goggles, they're probably not perceiving each other in the most realistic setting, where they're being like, at camp they're like forced to be near each other, but when they're out in the wild they will like have to coordinate around their schedules of school and stuff. They're going to have to deal with the repercussions of miscommunication, which they've already talked about a little bit before, as well as like the inability to see each other at all times. But I really like this couple, and this is turning out to be a rather sweet book, so I do appreciate that. I finished the book. I finished Wildfire by Hannah Grace. Holy crap, I can't believe I forgot her name. What's particularly interesting to me is the fact that it took me until like the last epilogue, like the last like 10, 20 pages of the book, that I was gonna give it a 5 stars. I decided that so late in the game because I was feeling really distraught over judging this book. Both characters, Russ and Aurora, have very terrible relationships with their parents for one reason or another. One of them is also going through addiction, a gambling addiction, not like a drug addiction, but still very serious. And so yeah, it was just a lot going on, and typically that will deter me from a book, but I do feel like it was necessary to the story. I was very emotionally attached to these characters, which I didn't expect, especially like because it didn't really seem to hit me until the last quarter of the book. I just really enjoyed it. I really liked their dynamic, even though they were so like emotionally dependent on one another, and like oversharey, and like where there's just like this constant communication, and they're just so happy. And so reading it, the cynic in me is like, oh my God, they're too in love. Like, it's just too in love. But then I sit back and I realize, like, if Jose and I, oh God, this is gonna get cheesy about my own personal experience. If Jose and I were like first dating, and within like the first few months, for some reason, we had to go and we worked at a summer camp together, I too think that I would fall very quickly in love with him, even more than I did at the time. like it just was like the perfect situation to find that in another person. And I think that the ability to kind of like, you're still technically completing a job, but you're also like getting all of this like forced free time. Like, there's no internet service, no phone service. Like, it just did seem like a really, this is so stupid to talk about, seemed like a great place to nurture a blossoming relationship. This book also made me like have to hold back tears quite a lot. And some of my closest friends on here will be the first to tell you that I absolutely hate too much like family bullshit in books. And the times that I cried was about the family bullshit. And so it deeply impacted me, even though I would normally hate that kind of shit. So overall, I got a 5 stars, and I didn't expect that at all. It's been a few days since the last time I spoke to you guys, but I wanted to give you an update on what I'm currently reading and my thoughts. For the last few days, I've been reading Raiders of the Lost Heart by Segura, and it is really fun so far, but I'm only like 35 pages in, just because it's been one of those books where after finishing Wildfire, I wasn't terribly interested in reading a romance, and a book that I'm reading for my other vlog is kind of taking over my mental capacity. Not because it's deep or anything, just because I'm enjoying it more. So I've been reading this a few pages a night for the last few nights while I am getting ready for bed. The reason I don't usually read before bed is because it makes me very tired, so I haven't read much. There was a direct reference to Harrison Ford. I don't think it was necessarily to Indiana Jones, but I might be incorrect. So I didn't know if they would like outright reference it, but they did, which is funny. We know the characters knew each other in school, but we don't know what that really meant. There was just something that happened when they were in school together. They didn't like sleep together or anything, but they did have some sort of tension and they opened up to one another, but for some reason that's not explained at this part. It's so early in the book. There's a lot of contention and rivalry between them, but their like reintroduction to one another was very interesting because they were both so angry to see one another. So I'm very excited to continue that one. It's a laundry day today, so I'm hoping that I have some more like time while waiting for laundry to dry and stuff to read and give you more of my thoughts. I don't know if you can see her back here. I'll try to zoom in, but Bento is taking a very like timeout-esque nap, and it was just really funny to me. I feel like this book is lasting a really long time. I think mostly just because I've only been reading it in like small increments. I am on page 204 now. We just finally had our first actual intimate scene. Like, there's been a lot of scenes where our main characters, Corey and Ford, Corey and Ford, have been like having those near misses. Like, they'll have a moment where they could have kissed, or they had a moment, they've had a lot of like sexual talk discussions, which was interesting because like they both leave them being like, I accidentally stopped recording instead of just clicking record. They've had a lot of near sexual experiences and talking about sexual things like masturbating and their sex lives and kind of romantic history stuff. And so it's been all building up very slowly. But I do have to say, the actual like non-romance plot to this book, they are in Mexico. They're trying to find the remains or like an artifact from Chamali, who is an ancient Aztec warrior who fled Tenochtitlan. The main character, Corey, thinks that she may be a descendant of his. And since there's these two different storylines where he escaped and had a life and had children, or he escaped and was no longer able to have children because of something that was done to him. It's just very interesting, and they are on this archaeological dig and they're having to figure out like, is this the right spot to do the dig? And there are these kind of smaller relationships with the side characters that are developing, and I'm getting a feel of like being at the dig site, being at the camp. And I think for some reason this kind of actually fits very closely to how Wildfire was making me feel, because I love the camping out in the woods kind of vibe, and I don't think the last book that we'll read in this vlog will be like that, but I do like that I unintentionally got a similar kind of take. It's got a little bit of action and adventure, and it's fun. It's more fun than I thought it was going to be, and I'll be honest, I almost didn't pick it up because I was like, shit, do I need to know a lot about the movie? I do have to say the first intimate moment that we did pass a few pages ago was a little clunky, because it was like they talked through things a little bit more than is typical in a romance book. There should be talking during sex and during intimate scenes. However, there were scenes, I'll bleep out what the inappropriate word is just in case YouTube is listening, which they always are. There was a moment that happened, I'm not gonna spoil that, but there was a moment before this where they both left that moment with a lot of sexual tension. And they both go back to their separate tents, and eventually she goes to his tent. She interrupts him doing something, and then she goes, can I see it? And he goes, see what? And she goes, your male chicken. And he says, you want me to show you my male chicken? And she nods. And he says, I don't know if you're joking right now or being serious. She goes, dead serious. My vibrator won't work until I get new batteries, so I need something for stimulation. Is it still hard? Like, I just felt like it wasn't, maybe it's how I'm reading it. This is how I'm reading it in my head, where it's very silly and like there is all that tension, but I just felt like it was kind of awkward. Like I was like, you guys have had this tension for almost a decade and everything's been leading up to this moment, and now you're gonna like have this clunky, like, show it to me, let me see it, do you want to do it? And it was just like a very weird, like, it didn't come across sexy. And I know sex doesn't have to be sexy, but it just was a little too comical and not in like a sexy, funny way. I'm hoping the next interaction we have with that kind of scene is not so weird and not so like, haha, you want to whip it out? Like, there's a time and place for that, but I don't feel like that scene was quite right for it. I could have taken a shower, but I didn't want to because I don't feel like this book deserved to have me at my best. It just wasn't great in the end. I didn't realize how much having badly written like intimate sex scenes in a book could affect my rating, but this one was just repeatedly so bad. There were like a few intimate scenes since I last checked in. None of them were good. The use of like different words and like different euphemisms for body parts was a little weird, but it was also just like the lack of chemistry during the sex scenes that was just really awkward. The wording just felt like really out of place, and it was like, I believe our big major sex scene was from Ford's point of view, which was a little bit weird to begin with. It didn't add anything in my opinion. It wasn't like, oh, you get to see how he like worships her. Like there was a little bit of that, but it was just not good. And then he like had a weird verbiage about it later that made me feel really gross. So I think like this is one of the rare examples for me personally where I feel like this would have been a better book without the sex scenes and almost without their romance as well, because that just like, there were some things that he did before the book takes place and that he continues to keep secret that for me personally in a relationship would be unforgivable. I just don't feel like there would be any coming back from admitting those things happen. It was just so personal and like it didn't fit with his personality. Again, I did really love the plot, like the actual plot of the book and like the archaeology parts and having to be out in the tents in the middle of Mexico, and just that part was amazing. I really loved that. And it sucks that the sex and the weird wording on things and parts of the relationship brought this down to a 3 out of 5 stars. So I'm gonna go take a shower and wash off all the negativity and we're actually gonna dive into our last book. The Fake Mate. Hopefully today I will start this one because I just need to like flush this book from my memory. And if it was anything like the other Lana Ferguson book, The Nanny, that I read that I really enjoyed, I think this will be able to get the like gross feeling out of my head, because that one was very like female empowery and this one's actually like Shifters, I think. This is probably not how I should start this clip, but I'm very cold. I've had a few days without reading a lot, but I did want to give you an update because I have started The Fake Mate. I am about 38 pages in and really liking it so far. The back kind of like, I don't know, I've read a lot of like shifter / monster romance books, and I guess I wasn't really expecting this one to be like alpha omega kind of stuff, but very early on we find out that it is kind of, I guess, omega versy, and I'm very curious how a traditionally published book is going to do that without traumatizing readers. I think that it's a great concept. I mean, I really like my main character. Okay, blanket needs to come off because I'm clearly not focusing. But I really like the main character so far. We have, what is it, Noah and Mackenzie? Yeah, Noah and Mackenzie. And the proposition that Mackenzie makes to Noah is that she needs a fake boyfriend, and then Noah comes back with, well, actually, like, do you want to just pretend to be my mate / basically the equivalent of a wife? And I was like, oh, that's not what I expected. I think the other reason I put it off a little bit is because I have come into the realization that this is going to be one of the male main characters that I unfortunately am obsessed with. I really enjoy just grumpy, the grumpiest, someone that is portrayed as like everyone else in the world thinks that they're so angry and mean all the time, and in reality they're just like really closed off. I love that kind of love interest. And so I already am like kicking my feet a little bit and giggling every time I read about him, which is unfortunate because that means that like I don't mentally want to finish the book because I don't want him to be gone. I like the dynamic between them. I'll also be honest, for some reason I thought shifters and I was like, oh, they're gonna be vets, like veterinarians, but they're just normal doctors. I just love grumpy love interests. God, oh no, I'm getting flustered just thinking about him. That's terrible. You know the meme when like you're holding your cat and then you move and they get so irritated they just go away? That just happened. I was trying to have Bento in this clip and she got startled because I think I pinched her a little bit with the ends of the tripod legs. I'm so sorry to Bento and to you. I know the last time we spoke I was blabbing and frankly just simping for the main character. This got very spicy very fast. Not really fast, like 150 pages in fast, but I was able to read like 200 pages yesterday and we're about page 236 now. And if you are not familiar with shifter romances or Omegaverse romances, this will probably come as quite a shock to you, the book, if you decide to read it, because everyone gets real horny real fast. It's something that I read a lot of. That's embarrassing. I've read a lot of shifter romance and like Omegaverse romance, especially from like Catherine Moon. It's not something that's terribly out there, but this one was damn spicy and I'm very excited that we got some more from Lana Ferguson because the nanny was also very spicy. I kind of wish that we got to see her and him interacting a bit more outside of the hormonal omega alpha thing, because now they're just like in this like rampant frenzy of sex and horniness. They're having to be like, oh shit, are we are we feeling emotions? And I'm like, god damn it, like I wish there was a bit more buildup, but I think that's the part of it. And it's the fact why it's a 400-page book, because we're here and they're both very confused because their bodies are not confused, but they're mentally, emotionally very confused. But I don't think it's gonna be a 5-star unless this last chunk of the book really has something big going on, because I'm not terribly invested in them or the world. If you don't know anything about Omegaverse stuff, this might feel weird. Think animals, because they are shifters. Before our character's heat comes on, I felt like I was into the story, and then the heat part happened and I was like, I'm not as invested in the sex stuff in this book. It's not bad, the sex scenes are great. I don't know, I almost wish that like there was like a full book of them being not in this state, and then maybe the second book will be like, oh no, she's come into heat. This is weird. This is gonna leave an odd online presence footprint for me, but you know, it's not the first time I've talked about nasty shit on the internet, so. Okay, we're at the end of the vlog now, and I wanted to share my final thoughts on Fake Mate and then kind of talk about all 3 of these books together. So Fake Mate, I did finish. I finished it today, and it's honestly probably the highlight of my day because I'm having a very bad day at work. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I think Lana Ferguson is really talented at writing super smutty romantic books. Like, it just, sometimes you get like a little too heavy into one or the other and the book becomes very weighted in that direction. Like, you're like, oh, this is just a horny ass book, or oh, this is just a cheesy ass romantic book. But this had a lot of both. I do feel like toward the end of the book, Noah became a little too ooey gooey center kind of person. Like, I kind of wish he retained more of the grumpiness, but I still had a really fun time with this one. And I think that, considering it's like one of the longer books that I've read in a long time, it was just delightful, and I really enjoyed the medical parts of it. There were a lot of scenes that took place at the hospital. There's a lot of characters on the side that I really cared about, and it was just overall really well written. The fact that it's a shifter book, I hope doesn't deter people from reading it, but I did really love it, and it was a 4 out of 5 stars. Going back and comparing it to the other 2 books that I read, I will say The Fake Mate does become my most favorite book that I read, even though I don't think it was the highest book that I read, highest rated book that I read. And then after that would be Wildfire, followed by Raiders of the Lost Heart, because this one, I just physically and mentally and emotionally could not stand our male main character Ford. He was just, ugh. I will say this had the communication problems that I typically hate at the end of a book, which is why I probably gave it a 4 instead of a 5. The communication thing was one of those where one of the characters just doesn't trust the other character to, like, be able to rationally help them figure out a problem solution, and it was really pissing me off because, like, obviously things are good in the end, but I'm like, just talk to your partner. Whereas these 2, great communicators. While there was still a few little frustrating moments, I feel like they got a good happily ever after, and they were able to talk to each other, they were able to talk through their problems, and they were also able to, like, self-assess and be like, I'm being an idiot, or I just don't know how to handle this. It might just be, again, because I just read Fake Mate, that I'm giving it, like, the favorite of the video. As we've come to learn, I just don't really rate things on a consistent scale. That's the power of being able to say whatever the heck I want in my videos on my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're looking forward to more videos like this, because I feel like this is the first time in a long time where I've been able to, like, give myself a TBR, and I stuck to it. I decided that I was going to give you my full thoughts along the way, so thank you for sticking around. If you stuck around this long, let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any romance recommendations. I would love to hear them, and I will see you in the next video.